Hey, and welcome to another devlog. First off, thank you all so much for all the support. The channel now has over 560 subscribers, which is insane to me. And also big thanks for all the kind and empowering comments that kind of really keeps me going and pushes me forward. But now let's go back to Calamity and take a look what is new and has improved since the last time. I want to implement some Destructibles because it's always fun to destroy stuff that's standing around. So I had a plan and I knew how to use the Apex Destruction plugin, but turns out Unreal 5 does not really support this plugin anymore, so I had to learn the basics of the chaos system. The chaos system is really great and has insane potential, but also it's kind of difficult to really get into it, and even now my knowledge does only scratch the surface. So what I did was I used the fracture mode to fracture the meshes that I wanted to be a destructible. This creates a geometry collection asset in which you can define how your asset should break. One problem with this geometry collection for me was that they have physics enabled from the get-go, which means if players are running into them, they will break and get flung all over the place. And I didn't want that. I only want them to break if players are rolling into them or are attacking them. So I needed to find a solution for that. I ended up using a blueprint with a static mesh that, if the playable character rolls into it or damages it, will destroy itself and after that spawn a new actor, which then will trigger the geometry collection with all its presets. Then I thought, wait a second, the Action RPG template I'm using has a random item spawner, and of course I want the Destructibles to drop some items. So I combined the geometry collection actor with the random loot spawner from the plugin. This took a bit and I ran into some problems, but shout out to the Discord server of the Action RPG plugin, they helped me figuring out how to combine them properly. Now the Destructibles can drop loot. Oh yeah, there is also a little bug where the blood trails get activated on every collision. I have to fix that at some point. But then again, even AAA games have stuff like this. After the actor blueprint with the geometry collection got triggered, it will slowly remove some of the debris. And after 20 seconds, the actor will destroy itself and the remaining debris. I'm doing it this way to not clutter the screen with asset pieces and keep a good performance. I will probably readjust some parts of that because I think there's too much debris at the moment, and I also want to have at least a broken asset part to be left behind as a static mesh. There are also some other little bugs I need to fix at some point. For example, if parts of the Destructible are sticking in the ground, it will break with a very high force and kind of explode everywhere. Now let's talk about combat. The next thing I implemented was a lock-on system. The players now can lock onto targets and the camera will focus on them. If there are more than one enemy, players can cycle through the locked-on targets. So how does it work? A button press will trigger a multi-sphere trace. If this sphere trace hits something within its range, it will then determine for every object it hits if it's an enemy and if the enemy is still alive. If both conditions are met, it will save the enemy actor in an array, and after that it calls a custom event 𝑛gageLock. This event will then lock the camera onto the first enemy in the array. If the locked on enemy dies, the camera will be set back to free mode again and players have to use the lock on button again. Of course, you also can unlock the camera with pressing the lock on button again if you're locked onto an enemy. Also, if you run out of range, the camera will automatically unlock. At the moment, the camera will snap pretty rapidly to a target. I want to smooth that out and make a better transition at a later point. A little bug is that if an enemy enters the reach of the lock-on system after players locked onto another enemy, the newly entered enemy will not be in the array of enemies to target, which means players cannot cycle through to this enemy. They will have to re-engage the lock-on system. I have some solutions for that in mind, but I'm not that happy with them because they have other drawbacks. For now, I will keep the system as is and test if this behavior even affects the gameplay in a bad way. I also added a new heavy attack. I still have to adjust the animations of the attack a bit, as you can see, but the game now has light and heavy or special attacks. As of now, this is how I want to implement the different weapon types. Every weapon type will have a different moveset which is compiled out of light and heavy or special attacks. Doing multiple light or heavy attacks in a row will trigger an attack pattern which will repeat. You will be able to chain light attacks into heavy attacks and the other way around, but every new attack type will start at the beginning of that chain pattern. For example, you could do a light attack into light attack into heavy attack into light attack again. Another example would be you could do light attack into light attack into heavy attack into heavy attack into a light attack again. This, for example, is also how Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 are using their attack chain patterns. At the moment I don't use a stamina bar and I kind of want to keep it that way. I want to try to balance the different attacks with animation timings, which in the end kind of equals to cooldowns, but in a smoother way. For example, if we look at some older Zelda titles like Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, which is undoubtedly the best Zelda ever created, we can also see that they don't use stamina bars for the attacks. The attacks are simply limited by their animation timings. This is what I also want to use in Calamity, because it gives a certain arcadiness to the combat which feels pretty good. If we take a look at the heavy attack in Calamity, we can see if players are doing this attack, they will commit to it until they reach the move state again and can cancel out of the attack. Doing a heavy attack will make more damage, but the animation also has a longer wind up and needs more time to finish. Which means you will commit yourself to standing longer in one place, and of course enemies can use this time to deliver damage to you. So you have to decide which attack makes more sense to use in a certain situation. There will also be things like stagger values, which means basically that heavier weapons need more time to attack, but also can in some cases interrupt an enemy attack, where for example a dagger will attack faster but can't interrupt an enemy attack. In the end, I also would love to implement a blocking and parrying system, but this has to wait until later. The main focus now is to get all the systems that are already implemented working smoothly and getting something playable ready to let people test out the combat. Besides that, I also updated some meshes, especially a tent I wasn't happy with, and I still need to make a more detailed texture for it. I also added some new textures for the trees to have a bigger variety of them. The material for the trees which holds the textures is designed in such a way that I can easily duplicate them and change their color and textures around. Lastly, I also did a bit of level design. At the moment I'm trying to get a better feeling for how the landscape should look to be more exciting and not just flat plains of land. It's kind of figuring out what lies between the points of interest and how to make these areas interesting to traverse, which means adding more cliffs and making the terrain a bit uneven to spark the curiosity to also explore these areas and make them look more natural. I definitely need to spend some more time with level design, and that gave me the idea to eventually stream some level design and 3D modeling. So the question here is, would there be any interest in some chill and cozy streams of level design or 3D modeling, kind of, I don't know, once or twice a week? If so, let me know and I will kind of look into setting something up. But yeah, even though I'm a bit anxious about live streaming, to be honest, but I guess it will be fine. And thanks again for all the support. So yeah, see you in the next one. Lag, words, difficult. Let's try this again.